So thank you. First off, I thank all you guys for staying. We appreciate that. I know it's always tough after show, but we greatly appreciate it. What we'll do is, if we can kind of go down the line and just briefly introduce yourself, who you are, and give a word, would be awesome. We'll start with Peter.
I'm Peter. I'm on Rubber Legs, which is, I don't know if this is specific enough, but I've been doing improv for a while. I started in college and then did some training at Improv Boston and then at the Magnet Theater in New York. And I've been here for 2 to 3 years, somewhere around there. So that's it. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I just finished level 2, as you saw. I started improv. I've been doing improv for a good while. I started in college, and then I started doing improv at PIG over the summer. And I'm doing level 3 next week or so. Next week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Justin. I started doing improv 16 weeks ago.
Oh! I'm Melissa. I was on Rubber Legs tonight and always since their inception. And I have only done improv here for, I don't know, almost 3 years now. Yeah.
I'm Bagley. I've been doing improv on and off for 12 years. I did a little training at the Magnet Theater. I went through the levels here at PIG 3 years ago, and yeah.
I'm Melissa Bowler. I've been doing improv for about 16 years now. Started in college. And I've been doing it ever since.
Hello, my name is Brad. I took classes at Improv Olympic in Chicago in the early 2000s, and then took a lot of time off because I wasn't good. And then rediscovered improv in Rhode Island July 11th of 2007, and tonight was show 391 for me. Prime number.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Chris Griswold. I've been doing improv for, since 1997, so it's 21 years. I've been teaching for almost as long as that. I've gone through the UCB program and used to work for UCB in New York, and I did the Annoyance program also when it was in New York City.
Hi, I'm Tom Epstein. I've been doing, I took improv in New York 20 years ago for about a few weeks and didn't really feel it, so I didn't pursue it there. But when I moved to Rhode Island 5 years ago, I hooked up with PIG, and 3 years ago, sorry, hooked up with PIG and been doing improv ever since. And yeah, my name's Tom Epstein.
I'm Jimmy. I'm currently the artistic director at Providence Improv Guild. I've been doing improv for a little over 11 years, and I've been with PIG since the opening gala. So go PIG! And yeah, I don't know. Improv quickly became a very important part of my life. Pretty much as soon as I started taking classes. So I've been loving doing it for the past 11 plus years.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Campany. I just graduated level 2 for the second time.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can retake classes and they're cheaper the second time. It's great. But yeah, I've been doing improv since the beginning of 2016. And just fun fact, me and Jimmy went to the same high school. He graduated years before I did because he's old, but yeah, the same upstate New York, so it's not like a local school. I felt like, yeah, like now we graduated from Coventry or something like that.
Oh, like your Rockport kids.
Yes, Rockport.
Yeah.
Hey, my name is Daniel. I took level 1 last year. I took a year off and I came back. I'm in the Providence area now, and I just figured, why not do level 2? So that's so I signed.
Cool. Welcome back. All right. guys, especially all rubber legs, if you can just kind of explain your format and kind of where the idea came from? A little.
I'll take this.
Yeah,
Okay,
crack.
cool.
My class showcase in Chicago, which at the time, you didn't have like level 1, level 2, level 3. You just had one 8-week run at the end of 6 levels. And the 6th level was when you developed a form as a group. And we've been working on a lot of stuff with long scenes and character monologues individually in level 5 and level 6. And they kind of gelled in level 6 to where it was, and we had, I think, 17 people on our team. So it was just a lot of people to try and get stage time. And so we kind of decided long scene, 3 to 5 character monologues, run of scenes with them, 3 to 5 character monologues based on those previous scenes, more scenes, and that they probably tie up at the end. And it was a way to get a lot of people on stage in a short period of time. And so when Rubber Legs came together, we talked about what we want to do, and I've been pushing for this idea just to kind of connect to my past and really to stick it to all the people who told me I wasn't good. And so, we rehearsed it and tried to figure out what worked and brought in different coaches to say what they liked and what they didn't like. And we kind of, landed on this form as one of the forms we're happy to do, and it's one where we really wanted to work it out and figure things out. There's not a lot of stuff done on the pig stage with monologues delivered in character, and so that was kind of a way to set us apart. So yeah, that's kind of the form. The form that we do is long scene, character monologues, scenes set in those worlds. So the world, I came out as a snake racer, so it's not necessarily that we're doing scenes with somebody who is a snake racer, but in a world where snake racing exists, which you saw in the first petition scene that devolved into jokes about the name Jack Mycock. Yes, devolved. You mean yes.
Still sticking it to them.
Yes. So, yes. Oh, that highbrow kind of joke. So that was kind of representative of the form, was the idea of having this character, and then if this character lives in the world, let's see other scenes from that world. So that was it.
Cool. Thank you. All right, you guys, any questions from you? I'm going to throw it to you guys first. Like from what we studied, anything you saw on stage, it's like, usually you just want to comment on it.
What are you scared of right now?
Do you guys ever? Do you guys ever have like some scenes prepped just in case? I don't know. Or it's just everything's just random.
Yeah. Yeah, no, really. I used to like when I first started doing improv, I was like, oh god, I want to do a scene about this. But like that exits my mind the moment I get on the stage. I never think of any of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the closest thing to like having anything prepped is if like we get a word suggestion, and like if you're just like starting like a montage and having sort of that idea like in your head of like what you had thought of, to like maybe like going back in case like there's like dead space and you need to like do something quick.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think there's anything really prepped.
I spent a good portion of my drive home from work today speaking in an Irish accent, and I was convinced that it was going to come out on stage, but it didn't. So it's like even when you try to like prepare stuff, like once you get in the moment on stage, it just you just trust in your teammates and just do what you're. Yeah, no, seriously.
You do an Irish drinking song in your car.
No, I would never do that.
Hold it.
Oh God.
No song forms.
One thing I'm trying to get better at is not thinking about it, because if I overthink, then I usually just I F it up. But if I just like clear my mind and just whatever the other person says, just kind of be like, okay, like Snake Racer, like that reality exists. Like what's true if that's true, and just try to be in that, then it works out better that way. So I'm trying to be better at not thinking.
Except that whisper scene. We debriefed after. Neither of us had anything the entire time. Fantastic.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that one too, because I mean, what do you do when you go out there and you kind of draw a blank? And not that it was obvious that you were drawing blanks. But...
Yeah. So Dan was whispering in my ear, nothing. So I was like, okay, so we're whispering for some reason. And I have no idea. I don't even remember what the suggestion was from the audience at that point. Thinking back now, it's obviously frogs. But and then I was like, okay, if we're whispering for some reason, what happens if I just stop whispering and get really loud? And luckily we had good sideline support to shush us, and then it became about that. So
That's funny, because I went out there, I thought we were bank robbers. Yeah, but yeah.
If you ever like go out there and feel like you have nothing, you have to remember that silence is also a tool on stage. The silence gives you the opportunity to create an environment physically. Was it Key? Yeah, it was Key from Key and Peele. He had a talk about when you are stuck, then you can like kind of you know this part of your world, the frame that's in your eyes right now, that's the part of your world, and then you can take a step back. And when you take a step back, you get to see more of your world. So you know that center part, and now we're going to fill in the outer part. So what new things do you see? What do you know about like where you are? And then you can take that step back and add, figure out new things in that world. So there's always room to like kind of take that breath, be silent, and like observe the world that you're in and pull from it.
There's also something to be said for trusting your teammates to take care of you. Well, like one of the things Rubber Legs we constantly do is like we all get involved somehow, even from the sidelines, throwing in noises or adding other details to the scene for the people who are on stage to work with and play with. So even if like they go out there with nothing, someone might make a bird noise and now they're outside. What can they work with that? Why are they outside? We start like peppering in little things as a way of supporting your teammates too. So even if you are like, no one's on stage, I got to get out there, it's not entirely on you. Everyone's going to contribute a little bit. You just got to bring your own piece.
Case in point, Peter here yelling at Brad to get out of his house, and then doing it again.
Yeah.
So what is that to them? Doing my deal.
Yeah, that's important, I think, too. It's just like the biggest trick of all of this is just confidence. Like we're trying to sell a show, we're like, hey, this is a show worth watching, because we're acting confident like it is, and then it becomes that thing, because we put ourselves in motion. And it's like, you do one thing, just do it again. There's no, if you're trying to come up with things on stage, it's going to take too long, it's going to take too long to communicate to your scene partner. Instead, you just make a couple decisive choices, and it looks and acts the same way that an idea would, but you've created it together.
You threw it on the ground and you stepped on it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sometimes when you do that, does it happen that two or more people find yourself in a scene and you're not both in sync? Like tonight, it could have been that I spaced out, but there was one or two times, very well could have been that I spaced out, that I wasn't sure where the hell you were and what you were doing. And did that happen to anybody tonight together?
What time are you thinking of?
He's spaced out, he doesn't know.
I always knew where everything was.
Yeah.
What do you mean? No, but seriously, what?
Seriously, I guess the scene when you were talking about feeding the hungry, feeding the world.
Oh, I don't know that we knew where we were.
Yeah, because I didn't.
No, we didn't.
Where we were now.
There was a poster.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we were
The
in a place
legend.
with a poster that had a legend,
Right.
and we were in a place that had
A lot of spinach.
Walls, chairs, and
Like your phone was in a drawer.
Yeah, your phone was in a drawer. There was a drawer and a poster in that place. So a room.
Right.
said the first
But
line.
that was
Yeah.
I asked it because you started talking about confidence. You played it so confidently.
It doesn't always matter if you don't know where you are.
Yeah.
Because
I guess we should
yeah.
tell students that, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah. Well, the thing I think. Well, yeah, because we drill that like the who, what, where. And establishing, yeah, well, establishing who, what, where is super important so that you communicate with your scene partner. At this point in our team chemistry and training, Alyssa and I can communicate those things without having to also we can get on the same wavelength without having to go through that. Like when you're first starting out, to get on the same wavelength with your scene partner, it takes a lot more actual communication, actual verbiage that you have to use. You have to use more words when you're starting, and then later as you get in more, you can sort of look and just be like, oh, all right, we're right now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, we're have this connection here, it's tenderizing, and now we know that already. And when you're starting out, you're kind of like avoiding eye contact, you're like not sure what to do, or like, you know, so there's so much more you have to articulate. And I think that's the part that it is. So we didn't know where we were, but we knew we were just tasked with solving world hunger, and we were going to find out those details as they needed to be uncovered, because as long as we still had enough there to work in between us, we didn't actually have to add more.
Okay, I'm relieved because I was working really hard and thinking, I'm really screwing up because I don't know what the hell they are.
No, most of the show, I don't think I knew where I was
Okay.
at any one given moment. I knew we were at a potluck. I assumed maybe our house, but it could have been a function hall.
Yeah, well, that was-
Again, there was a drawer.
And the where I think is also about setting a picture. So you saw my draw, you saw
Yeah.
the screen that we were looking at,
Right.
the picture. So that's really the where too. Is like.
Oh, you were both
how-
very focused on that.
Oh yeah. Well, I can still see it.
Yeah.
I can see the back of it.
I think
Bummer.
sometimes,
I like
Nice
it.
to be able to see the front.
when we drill the who, what, where, I think sometimes we get really stuck in
Yeah.
specifics.
Pull down chart.
Yeah.
Like, okay, specifically, where were they? I think there was enough there and enough agreement between the two performers that we knew they were probably indoors, we knew they were probably in a room somewhere.
Yeah.
The specifics and minutia of where exactly that room is wasn't as important as they were in some space together indoors dealing with this specific thing with the two of them. And they both agreed that that was enough information for us to do this scene. And to work
And
with
if
it.
later revealed, we're like, we got to get out of Karen's house. Like, that probably would have gotten a laugh, and we
Yeah.
would have wiped the scene too. So that's another thing. Like, sometimes keeping one in your back pocket can be good too.
Yeah.
Early on in like studying improv, one thing that we really need to kind of like teach you is how to get on the same page. And the best way to do that on level one is with that base reality, because those are like the three main elements to create the beginning of that story. And as you train more, as you work with specific people more, then you learn and find ways to get on the same page quicker without having to say those specific details.
One thing I'll say, like I'm sure you have been told to yes and a lot. That's really, I mean, that helps if you know what's going on. If you don't, just make a big assumption, but state it. Like whatever you think it is, just like put that out there. And then that way you and your scene partner are gonna find each other and kind of sync up and get on the same page again. No single person owns the scene, so feel free to just like add the information you think belongs there. Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
if you're not
Jimmy was a
clear.
snake. I should point that out. In the scene where I was
It took
feeding him
me
an
a minute,
apple,
too.
I'm like, oh yeah, he's Jabba the Hutt. Actually, when he set the chairs up, I'm like, oh my goodness, we're gonna redo the riding a train scene, but we're gonna be facing the other way.
Oh, Jimmy, you missed it.
But then he laid down. I'm like, what the heck is this? And then he said, "Give me an apple." I'm like, oh, like a pig. And I did not understand that he was a snake until we were like the show was over and we were back there talking about him. Honestly,
I thought he was Caesar.
oh, of course.
Yeah, I thought it was Caesar's.
Yeah,
because he said to Brutus.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Oh, he was Caesar.
Right,
We're all learning things tonight.
Good night, everybody.
What about if you don't, like, snakehead? I mean, I got the reference, but if you don't get a reference, I mean, is it okay just to ask and say, well, what is that, or?
I'd say
You know?
either ask or assume it's something
Yep.
and
just
own that assumption. Like,
Yeah.
Sometimes that's funnier.
if I'm doing a scene with Jim Bagley, who in his day job is a lawyer, and he comes up here and says, jurisprudence ipso facto, and I'm like, okay, but I just make an assumption and go with it. The audience that doesn't know what jurisprudence ipso facto means, which
Means free
is
law.
everybody, yes, they're going to be on board with me. They're going to realize that I assume it means like the soup of the day. And the lawyers in the crowd who do know what it means are going to laugh even harder because I clearly don't know it. So as long as Chris talked about confidence, as long as you own that assumption, you can talk about whatever you want on stage.
I'll say, oh, sorry. If there's any kinks like that, if there's any like moments that are like unusual or someone makes a mistake or anything like that, it's so easy to call that out and try to make that the funny thing. It's so much more masterful to just yes and it and just accept it like it's true. And like if somebody starts a scene with you and they're talking about Game of Thrones and you've never seen Game of Thrones, act like you have and make up anything that you think
Just like real life.
should happen. Yeah, why not? But the thing is also like if two people are yes anding and making up what Game of Thrones is, it's going to drive the audience crazy in a way that I find very fun.
I'm going to add to what was said by saying Brad here teaches a wonderful workshop in pretending to know what you've been given. You have no idea. And I hope he schedules it again soon. It's been a couple of years.
Thank you, Brad.
So one thing I want to add to that is if you are the person that's bringing the reference to the stage, it is not then your job to correct the person who yes sands you in the wrong way. So if you're bringing that reference, you are bringing out like a grenade of just like, hey, play with me, and then like we don't get it, and you can't just say like, no, this is what it is. Trust me. This like just as soon as you throw it out there, then that can be yes-anded into anything else, and you go with whatever new reality is created with your scene partner.
I'm old. I like to say that any improv scene is essentially just Calvin ball. All the rules change as long as people keep playing it.
What ball?
Calvin ball.
I know what that is.
Yes,
See?
and.
Yes, and.
Oh, yeah.
Take the kid's head off.
Oh, you broke my heart.
I know, like this past week we were working with characters and stuff. So I wanted to speak a little bit. If you guys can kind of comment on some of the characters you played, because we talked about how characters are caricatures and how they are more, subtleties and emotion. You can kind of derive a character more so even than an Irish accent. No offense, Jimmy.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
Just saying your Irish accent sucks.
But yeah, like I think like we saw some really good characters. Like I mean, even your Mr. Mighty. I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
vulgar.
trying to block it out. But I like to like. I mean, you weren't necessarily that character when that scene began. It kind of evolved.
No, for some reason, oftentimes when I play a man, I feel like they thrust their pelvises out, and that just becomes kind of like part of my male characters. And then Peter was like, so I was like, I guess my penis is out or whatever. So, yeah, that was that character. It's very subtle. Very subtle.
Actually, though, aside from large appendage, it actually was like, as a guy, I was watching, I go like, that's a great portrayal of a guy. It was enough where it wasn't like, that stereotypical one you've seen a lot, but you got traits down that were like, so I really liked watching that.
Every single double entendre along the way.
Yeah, right.
What I appreciate most about that character, there's nothing to do with the large penis, yeah? Was that you started the scene out like pretty typical, and you were talking about a character that's not on stage, and that often can get a little like when that happens I think in level 1 or so, where like two players will start talking about someone who's not on stage, and what I love about that character is that it was polarizing, and it became about you and your game, your activity, your fun thing, and less about Armando. Armando. Yeah, I would say like make sure you're not doing too much of talking about like a character that's not on stage.
I guess we don't know if it was cock, because it was just Jack my COC.
I hope somebody did this earlier.
I thought it would get giggles or chuckles, and it got nothing. And I'm like, Noah is in the audience.
Double down.
I'm not going to finish spelling it in front of Noah.
That was true.
We said fuck like 20 times.
I did.
There's a line, Peter, there's a line. Apparently the F word is fine.
Just saying.
Jack my
I can say
implant.
I like to be a man on stage. I don't know why I think it's so funny, but if I'm on stage, somehow I end up being a man. It helps me, I think, get out of who I am, and I can take on more silly or outrageous or different personalities or accents if I'm just like not a woman. If I'm a woman, somehow I'm always me again. I'm just like, But, her, what's she doing here? So yeah, that's fun. Be different.
When we talk about that, like you don't have to be whatever gender you prescribe yourself to be on stage. You can be any one you want, which is half the fun.
I would suggest sticking with what you know, though. so that you don't play like caricatures. Like you want to kind of represent the humanity in the character to some extent. So like base it on people you know. By the way, like use names of people that you know for the other character. You know, like use your high school crush or whoever. Just put that on the other person. You're going to connect. But yeah, come from what you know. You're going to be able to control that sort of character mech more readily.
Yeah.
Well, we talked a lot about like if you're endowed on stage as, you know, as the mother or the father, let's say, by the kid, just play that, you know, and we don't have to play it like, oh, I got to go into a silly voice. I hope I got to do it as. You can just play it as you, but now you just have to remember that you are.
So the level 2 class, they cross-gendered the mom and the dad, but they didn't play characters that were stereotypes or super accents. They just played it. The mom and the dad, great.
Yeah. Which is great because level 2 is game. Level 3 is character, so you really get in depth with that. But that was a pretty nice portrayal of at a level 2 to not overboard the characters because it's really easy to go into that silliness, which just really takes people right out of what you're watching.
Because you don't want the humor to be a man playing a female character. It's still the relationship between the characters on stage that's driving the story.
We talked a lot about emotion too, which is, I thought a great representation was your train ride. Watching you two like deteriorate through the and
20 hours later.
What is going on? What is happening? I hate hay. Simply beautiful.
Thinking about hobos riding train cars and what's in those train cars, and there's always hay in those train cars. And these were kids who didn't plan, and they had to eat hay. It makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yes.
One of my favorite scenes was like the prisoners, and when you guys first came out, like I don't think you declared that you were prisoners. It wasn't until Peter said like, back to yourselves, right?
2 minutes.
That's a big example of like a yes and. Like they didn't know they were prisoners until he said that, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're prisoners, and now we're in this reality. I thought it was like such a good example, and like their relationship progressed as the scene went on. So I thought that was a really good one.
It was also really interesting to watch talk about like the world and how you guys really had created this neat world that just sort of kind of started running into each other, like concentric circles of trains became concentric circles of a prison because we had training prisoners as, I mean, it was like beautiful to kind of watch these worlds all kind of collide and work together, and that's sort of, one of the things we talk about is like working so hard to invent stuff. They didn't have to invent as much because it was kind of there. They just borrowed it, repurposed it, and came up with something that was brilliant, but they didn't have to start from scratch. And I think when you're level 1, you're always searching like, am I funny? What's this? I gotta invent, you work so hard and you forget that stuff that happens early in the show can be brought back or repurposed or played with. And that's something we try to work on. Like as we start to run montages, which we will now more and more, so you guys can start to kind of put those pieces together. But I thought it was like a masterful display of how that world was created and how it was used. We went off that too.
You talk a lot about, just letting go and just not trying to bring something, prepare something. But it seems that there's a lot of folks up here who've been doing this for a long time, that my improvisation, I'm a musician, so a jazz musician, so I realize that it's the same thing in a sense, but having done it for a long time, there's a whole reservoir of something that's happened over and over again that you can't help but it informs what you're doing right now. You're not thinking about it, you're not preparing and deciding, I'm going to do this, but that's got to enrich the situation. So the more you do it, the more that reservoir gets filled with opportunities.
Improv's more like a sport, in that way. It's like, and then the more versed you are, like the better you get at it. And that's the thing, like that's what taking those classes are. It's like doing those drills, learning the skill set, so that in the moment you can then apply it, and you have all these like super strong tools. And so it's about like strengthening all those things. But you're absolutely right. It does pull on, and and then you get like in like little ruts where you plateau. You have like the same 5 characters over and over and over again, and then like you add another one. Like then you like take a workshop and it freshens it up and stuff like that. But that's
or you get bored with your own shit.
Exactly. That's what makes you want to learn more.
And I think when we talk about stereotypes, that's how we categorize people. That's how we think of people. That's how people write books. It's like based on these these broad, characteristics of
And
people.
misconceptions.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, I'm not necessarily talking about bad stereotypes, but just like what you imagine, a kid to be like. There's kinds of kids, oh, this is the nerdy kid, this is the sporty kid, and we are all picturing a similar kind of person in our mind when we talk about those things.
It's theater tropes. Who's an action movie star?
Tropes, yeah.
Who's a wizard?
Synonyms.
One thing to do also is just write down all the things that you do a lot and then set them aside. Like, don't allow yourself to do them anymore, and then you'll start to keep expanding your range. And you're like, oh, I play a lot of 1950s B-movie scientists. All right, I can't do that anymore. Yeah, put that in the
And just like absorbing a lot of art outside of improv is very helpful, because kind of like you're talking about, you find yourself after a while drawing on kind of your kind of stereotypical figures of like what a nerd is, or what are some other characters? I don't know. Just nerds. It's just nerds and non-nerds.
Nerds and dorks.
It's nerds all the way down. Nerds all the way down.
But like reading more books, reading more articles, listening to a wider variety of podcasts, or wider variety of music. Those things kind of challenging your limitations with regards to other art you consume outside of comedy. That stuff helps. It kind of like that reservoir you're talking about. It does kind of broaden that reservoir. Just stuff that's not comedy really helps you, fill your brain up a little bit more and bring new stuff. Bring in new things. You read a book about a lonely nerd that's a little bit different from the one you've read before, and you're like, oh, now I have a different way to play a lonely nerd.
You found my autobiography.
Yeah, sorry, I should have told you, but I read it and it was very interesting.
Thanks.
Anybody got anything else they want to bring up? Question?
Y'all ready to go home?
One question.
Yeah.
So the hobo scene, like, I think you just both jumped, I forget who did it, but you just both jumped onto the chairs or something. Like,
Yes.
did you know before, did you like work this out in advance? Or you just,
I was like, okay, it came from the idea of the legend, because we hadn't touched that world yet, and it was the idea that somebody who can't conceive, like doesn't understand, like an inch on the map equals 100 miles or whatever. So it was a kid who was running away, and how would they be running away? And I was like, oh, it'd be interesting if they were riding the rails. And so when I sat on top of the chair
I just copied his physicality.
yeah, and I had a line, she had a line, and then I had a line that established we're riding the rails.
Yeah, I didn't know we were running rails.
Yeah.
I was thinking we were birds.
Yeah. We figured it out, and so it was definitely.
And then when we called it back, that language was just a tag out. So once I knew that too, I was like, oh, we're going back.
Yeah,
to
we're
that
going
one.
back.
So then we were able to jump on real quick. And stuff.
Yeah. So, it wasn't anything we talked about ahead of time. I think tonight I challenged myself was to use the space in a different way. But normally I don't go through that door, and I've literally never gone through that door. I was like, oh, there's a piano back here. That's nice. And sitting on the tops of the seats instead of the seat of the seats was just a way to kind of shake up my own personal characterization tonight. So, and it's one of those, like, if I sat up here and Bowler sat down here, fine. We'll figure out what the scene is from there. Or
Yeah,
if
I
I
was
said, like,
you sat up there and I was like, I'm a bird!
yeah,
Like, you were
like,
just,
all right,
that would've been
I'm
one of
also
them.
a bird, yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I came up with a restaurant called Peels and Skins off stage and never got it on here. Only serve snakes and fruit.
Oh.
Done. You know what? That's fine. Just doesn't show up.
I almost did a walk-on on your potluck scene, showing up late with a thing of bugs. But I'm like, no, they don't need me. They're third in this scene.
I kept my priapism joke to myself.
Thank you.
So next week, Irish guy with a priapism.
4 hours.
Awesome. Anything else? Good.
I'll just say, if you come see future shows with Rubber Legs, or I'll speak for you guys, and you want to talk to us afterwards, that's fine. Like, we're always happy to answer questions. We're always happy to receive compliments. But if you're like, you know, if you come in our next show, and you're like, oh, that was a weird scene, and then you ask us afterwards, and we'll be like, yeah, that was a weird scene. Here's what I was thinking. Here's what I was thinking, and that's it. So like, I'll also speak for Jackpot this Saturday night team. Happy to answer questions.
A lot of us like are more like just assume that like no one likes us and we're a little anxious around like social things.
That's
So
why
a
we do
lot of us
improv.
just tend to like be like, oh, we just hide in the darkness in the back afterwards. And but like if you approach us, we're very friendly, but we just don't. We're not going to approach you.
Tell me what you liked about my performance today.
We're like those puppies in the pound, right?
One thing I want to say / plug is that now that you've seen Chris Griswold on stage, he's not normally a part of Rubber Legs, but he does have a 2-day intensive going on over the weekend, as well as a single workshop tomorrow afternoon. So if you're inspired, please sign up and take his classes, because this is a great opportunity while he's here with us this weekend.
Both those are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get some real work done.
Bum, bum, bum.